Hello, and welcome back to On Your Screen, a new podcast series brought to you by the Video Essay Podcast. I'm your host, Will DeGravio, and today's episode is dedicated to Monographs, a video essay series commissioned by the Asian Film Archive that is currently streaming via the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art until May 2nd, alongside Kevin B. Lee's video essay, Explosive Paradox. On today's show, I sit down with the two individuals behind Monographs, Thong K-Wee and Viknesh Kobinathan, who are both programmers at the Asian Film Archive and the project coordinators for Monographs. I've been wanting to talk to K-Wee and Viknesh for a long time. If you are at all familiar with the video essay landscape in the past year, you will know that Monographs is one of the most celebrated projects of the year. It was named one of the best video essay projects of 2020 by the editors of Sight and Sound and has screened at film festivals and venues worldwide. In our conversation, Viknesh and K-Wee talk about the origins of the project, the impact that it's had on them, how they went about collaborating with a series of artists and critics, and what their hopes are for the project going forward. All of the information about the Smithsonian screening, as well as the Monographs video essay series, will be available at thevideoessay.com, and information to get in touch with K-Wee and Viknesh if you would like to screen Monographs at your venue or film festival. And now, without further ado, here is our conversation about Monographs. Welcome to the Video Essay Podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks for having us here, Will.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, and I say the Video Essay Podcast, but this will be as part of the mini series On Your Screen, which is highlighting different screenings and things around the web that you should watch and that you can watch on your screen. My first question is to each of you, and Viknesh, we'll start with you. Could you just briefly introduce yourself to the audience and share how this project came into being, how you first conceived of the idea, and then how you went about selecting contributors for the project?
So my name is Viknesh Kobinathan. I'm one of the project coordinators of Monographs together with K-Wee, and I'm also one of the programmers at the Asian Film Archive. Just a sort of a brief thing about the Asian Film Archive. We've started off as a film archive, and now we've sort of expanded our scope of programming. We now run a dedicated cinematheque where we screen Asian films, both contemporary and classics, and special programs, original programs, and so on. Monographs started at a time when there was just no cinema activity in Singapore because of the pandemic. When Singapore went into a lockdown, essentially, as it is with all countries that went under lockdown, so cinemas were with no activity. So as programmers, we were wondering, what can we actually program? When we can't really have audiences in the cinema. So we're just bouncing off ideas, and we came to this idea of okay, let's engage with the wider film community. People that we know, people that we might want to be connected with, who are thinkers and writers of Asian cinema. And let's see what kind of knowledge can we generate. Written essays were one thing, but also video essays were an arena that we felt could be explored further. It's already a very ubiquitous form of criticism, but we were finding that there isn't a lot of dedicated content for Asian cinema, other than the kind of areas of Asian cinema that are commonly talked about. Your masters, your canonized kind of Asian filmmakers. When obviously it's a very rich tradition it's incredibly diverse. So that's really the starting point for us to kind of connect with these communities, and also filmmakers whose kind of livelihoods were also kind of disrupted, or they were in between projects that were not happening anymore. So we thought, okay, this is a great way for us to engage them and be like, okay, hey, you're in a state where you're not having projects done, and the video essay is also a relatively you don't really need to kind of film anything in that sense. You can kind of just pull archival clips or stuff you've already done before, and then you can build a thesis around it. So that's really where the starting point came from. And yeah, I'll let Kiwi kind of continue like how. Yeah,
well, it kind of covered everything.
Yeah.
But so my name is Kiwi. So similar to Vignesh, I am with the Asian Film Archive as a programmer and an outreach officer for more than 6 years now. So like exactly what Vic is saying, like during those times when we didn't know what to do with no cinema activity, we were like, okay, we should still be doing something as a public institution. So again, how best can we support our fellow communities while using this approach to connect with everyone? Because I think it was a time where all the more we should be connecting with each other. So then at the same time, it's also a great opportunity for the archive to expand on our own knowledge of Asian cinema, as well as sharing that to the world. And as Vic is saying, it was a great platform for people to do it kind of in their rooms with the computers, pulling off archival footage and building off knowledge from there. So I think that is the impetus of why we began. And then I think the process is, how do we do this? Who do we approach, right? So then we kind of just wanted to kind of suss out people that we know by doing we started with like identifying consultants that we thought would be great people to kind of mentor the project, as well as do this in collaboration with us. So then me and Vignesh found a few candidates and then reached out to them, and one of them is Kevin B. Lee, who is such a great renowned video essayist. So that's how he came on board. And
the other person that we got on board was May Adador Ingawanich, who's an academic based in the UK. So with the two of them, with these kind of two entry points into Asian cinema and also criticism, we found a way to reach out to people that we might not normally have known or maybe weren't in our existing radar. So that's how things really got started. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I love hearing how collaborative it was, because I think, you mentioned one of the great things about the video essay is that you don't need a team of people to go out and shoot video, right? Like you can just pull clips from wherever you can find them. And so I think sometimes when we think about video essay, or at least I do, I think of myself alone, like with my computer, playing around by myself and then releasing something out into the world. So could you talk a little bit about how the collaborative process worked? How did you work with contributors? How did they select their topics? Because in going through the video series, it was so great to see, obviously there's a wide range of cinematic traditions that are engaged with, but just, aesthetically, everyone took different approaches to how they were working with whatever material they selected. So could you take us behind the scenes? What was that process like?
I think at the start, we toyed with a few ideas of like, okay, now, it's the first time doing this. Should we have like a framework? Should we have like a thematic focus? We kept thinking of these things, but we thought, hey, it's our first time, so let's just like open up the canvas, right? I mean, with all this wide variety of people that we're reaching out to, why not we just let them kind of decide what they want to talk about, Yeah. But also going back about the selection process. May Adador kind of was on board quite early in the selection process. So when we had like a long list of names, and then we had basically asked each of them to send us a proposal. And then we kind of selected based on that proposal. And May was part of that process with us, where she kind of went like, okay, these are some interesting trajectories that we can go to, and then we kind of whittled that down to a shorter list, and that's how we kind of went into the selection process. Yeah. And the shaping of the essays once the essays were selected, that was also a bit of a kind of a back and forth process, but we very much let the essays themselves lead where they wanted it to go. It was the collaboration was a lot of kind of fine tuning, a lot of bouncing off of ideas, and then Kevin came in at a slightly later stage, but he was guiding a lot of the essays on some of the finer points about essay making, about edits. He actually had a lot of one-on-one time with individual essays, like working on the edits, like quite a lot of working on nuance and things like that. So, and then we on the institutional side, were also had our say, and we'd be like, okay, maybe we can take it this way or that way, and that's how it was a very organic process in some sense.
I think this are also collaboration wise, these are all in the close call. It's a context that both Vignesh and I knew, but of course that's where we also tapped into the networks of May, and I think on some levels Kevin as well. So that's how we kind of like make the call out. So back to talking about what types of proposals. I think another point that we are thinking about is, firstly, we also want to learn from other people. So we didn't want to really restrict everyone. And also during such a strange time, I think all the more we wanted people to freely express something that they really want to share with the world, and not to kind of maybe follow too strict a guideline in terms of a thematic or curation. So then once that all put into, I believe it was about 50 to 60 plus proposals that were submitted to us, then I think a few things that we looked at in terms of criteria, for instance, is which topics are topics that are not really seen or heard about, especially in a video essay format. Because I think our main objective is to really share wealth of knowledge that people might not really talk about or discuss about. Right. Then, so that diversity is very important to us. And I think how niche some of the topics are some of the topics otherwise we wouldn't know as well if this wasn't an exercise that we did. So then those topics interest us. Then then after that, then both Vic, Kevin, May, we kind of just then crafted into maybe these two lines of programming or inquiry. I believe in different institutions there were like frameworks and moments as well as motives. And so these are just things that maybe was a bit more, in hindsight, what we came up together as two frameworks to present.
What was the general experience level of the contributors? I haven't gotten a chance to go into all of their different biographies. Did you have folks who had never made a video essay before? Had some been video essayists? And could you just anecdotally talk about what they said their experience was like in creating video essays? Vignesh, I see you nodding. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, Monographs, there were two kind of arms to it. There was a written essay part and then there was a video essay part. So when we put out the sort of call for people to propose, we try not to limit their options. We approached people who were primarily working with images, but we also reaching out to people who were also just critics, like who are just used to the written word. But we thought, hey, it'd be interesting if people want to try out stuff. If someone has only written stuff and you want to let me just try this video essay thing, they could have the option to do that, and vice versa. So one person that comes to mind is Maya Kobecker, who's always been a critic, a film critic with the written word. And this video essay that she did about Chinese cinema was her first video essay. And you can kind of tell it comes from a tradition of writing criticism, and she shared with us anecdotally as well that she actually literally wrote down an essay of about 2,000 words, and then she kind of read that and then put images to it. Right. And of course, on the other end of the spectrum, you have quite established filmmakers like Raya Martin from Philippines, who has made many features, and he's an artist and filmmaker in his own right with a body of work. And then you also have filmmakers like Saudat Ismailova from Uzbekistan, who's also a visual artist and filmmaker. So you have these varying levels and also varying entry points. So yeah, that is one quite distinct characteristic of this video essay project. Yeah.
And I also think that there is this interesting range of works. Like some you would call a video essay something that maybe belongs more in an academic setting, right? And which maybe is something that people are more used to in this format. But then you have some of these artists or filmmakers that we approached that decided to maybe elevate this if I may say, like in a maybe a more essayistic film type of approach, which was also quite interesting for us because I think at the end of the day, we were intrigued by their proposals and then what they kind of transformed along the way with, in consultation with, Kevin or May, was something that was quite surprising to us as well. So you have this good range of essays of different forms, some experimental, some a bit more, maybe more didactic in a way, but all very much valuable to the whole project, or maybe defining or maybe even redefining what a video essay could be. So then that is something that we thought was quite interesting that we maybe did not realize when we started this whole process. Yeah.
Oh yes, I couldn't agree more, and I think that's so much of what this podcast and show is, right? It's trying to negotiate all those different, I guess, genres of what a video essay can be, right? And Kevin is someone who has explored this at length, and I think that's what makes this, I think, body of work so compelling, one of many reasons, and my next question is, in talking a little bit about how video essays are typically made, often a video essay is immediately uploaded to a platform like Vimeo or YouTube or some type of, web sharing. Increasingly, we're seeing video essays just uploaded straight to Facebook or Twitter or other social media after their creation and then are widely shared. These videos instead have screened as a group at various festivals and online events. I haven't had a chance to attend a festival screening yet, so I would just be curious how the exhibition and distribution of this project, which is, I imagine, what the two of you think about, how has that shaped it, and how do you go about deciding how to structure that? Because that's not something that I personally think a lot about video essays, and I'd really be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the festival life or the distribution life that Monographs took on is a yet another one of those organic things that came from this project. Our initial vision for the project was, for the lack of better term, quite short-sighted or short-term. So we were like, okay, let's get these works out. Let's get them out as soon as possible, so we can generate content during this pandemic, But as they started taking shape, it was Kevin actually who came to us and went, hey, there's something, you guys really have something here. And he told us you can submit them to festivals, And until Kevin brought this up, it never occurred to us. And we were like, okay, let's give this a shot, So we just started. What we initially told the essays was that, I think we're going to release them by the end of 2020 online and, on YouTube, and that's just what's going to happen. But then with this idea, we thought, okay, so we told the essays, we're going to do this festival thing. You guys are on board. So we did, we sent them out, and then we got a lot of interest. It world premiered at the Dharamshala International Film Festival, which became a digital festival last year. And then, it started taking on this life of its own. And then, when we talk about how the program was ordered, that was also something that was done in collaboration with Kevin as well. This thing about like putting them into two programs and then ordering them and, giving them these thematic overarching things like motifs and moments. That also came about in hindsight, but is these interesting developments that took on a life of its own, really.
Yeah. I guess that's where it trained our expertise as film programmers to kind of really think about how to sequence them, frame them, and come up with two different strands, so to speak. I personally think that there are two attributes to what we've created here with this project that made maybe film festivals want to pick this up. I think, firstly, again, this project is born out of a time, this time of solitude, this time of lockdown. And I think that itself, what came out of that would interest any film festivals to want to take that on. And I think one or two works does touch on this present reality that we have. So that's one. I think the other thing is also many festivals are going online, like a digital platform. So then I think this particular project does allow, this viewing online. I mean, it was supposed to be that anyway. And then it made it maybe a bit easier, more accessible on a digital online festival for them to consider taking that on. So I think we kind of hit this, good time, so to speak, for it to make its rounds across these places. And I think once like the first two festivals kind of pick it up, and then that's where the interest rode on, and here we are, doing this premiere in the States with the Smithsonian.
Yes, and I think you're so right. I think, now that so many film festivals have moved online, some, as you say, Vignesh, permanently, others, perhaps for last year, this year, and maybe even the next couple of years, and then they'll go back into person, or maybe we're seeing some festivals look at hybrid models. I think that works to the advantage of the video essay in a way, because it's something that's made to be watched for the most part on a computer screen. And you mentioned that you had originally, and I should say that, you also debuted at the Essay Film Festival, and we talked to Michael Temple, who was I think that was at your UK festival debut, I believe. Yeah. And we talked to Michael there. And so I'm based in the States, but we have a audience from all over and a lot of folks in the UK. So I'm sure some listeners probably had a chance to see the series through the Essay Film Festival as well. But I'd be curious to talk about, you mentioned that you had originally planned to put them all online in 2020. And so when you set out to make the project, what were your goals or your desired impact, or what did you hope to achieve through the project? I know that's like talking about it in very weird terms, but and how has that turned out? How has it changed as more and more people have seen the monographs? Because it seems like, as you already said, it has evolved over time.
I think the initial ideation of this project was really around like we said earlier about connecting with people, generating knowledge and content, and then making that available for our audiences. In the absence of programs at the cinema. So that was really, like, in a nutshell, where it all started. It's not that anything has radically changed. I think it's just the scale of it has changed, and the ways in which it has reached people has changed. The fact that the program can appear in a festival program just gives it this different edge, gives it a different context, and like Kewi said, and it also makes it quite poignant in the sense that, when in 2020, where so many people in the film communities were wondering what is the future of distribution, or what is the future of the idea of the film festival, we noticed the resilience of platforms such as festivals that were just shaping and evolving according to meet the times. And it is quite serendipitous and actually quite nice that Monographs is able to come in and be part of that evolution of festival viewing or festival screenings, and we get feedback from the fortunate people in some places that have actually been allowed to be in a cinema and watch them. So to actually see it screened in a cinema in Singapore when we did our Southeast Asian premiere was really special, and then we get people from the Ibisu Festival in Japan who were telling us about like how that was also the first time that they've had an audience come to a cinema. So we get these like glimmers of hope of a post-pandemic like cinema culture, and the fact that Monographs was part of that just made it that much more special.
Yeah, I think for me is like looking at where we're working at, where our slogan or objective is to really explore and share Asian cinema, then I think that definitely is the objective of this project. I mean, also what we've mentioned earlier, like to give this platform of a video essay platform for maybe film histories or film thinking that is maybe not so commonplace, especially in this format, to give them that platform. And honestly, for like an international audience, like people across the world, to actually have a better understanding of, or a glimpse of, what these histories might be. I mean, we across this whole video essays, we really have like different histories from from Vietnam, from Iran, from Myanmar, Uzbekistan, like a lot of places that people might not know about. I think to give them that exposure, I think if anyone is intrigued after that in this national film histories or this thematics, then I think it's a job done for us. Yeah.
And just to sort of add, I think there's also that element of these lines of inquiry into Asian cinema, we always see how Asian cinema is written from a certain perspective, from a certain canonization or from a largely Western critical lens. So in a sense, this is an attempt at challenging a certain canonized view. To open up spaces in people's consciousnness, to go like, hey, there are these hidden histories in Myanmar, in Uzbekistan, in Iran, and and if these, like KV said, if these essays can just pique your interest and go like, make you want to know more, find out more, I think we've kind of achieved to pushing the needle a bit,
Yeah, and as a public institution with certain resources, I think that is exactly what our position is, to try to promote, really.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what's so compelling about the form of the video essay and this project in particular, is that, it's this, yes, it's an artistic endeavor. Yes, it can be incredibly personal, but it also aims to educate, and to give you further lines of inquiry and giving you a way to feel your way into something new and then saying, all right, go, find, discover, learn more. And obviously that's why it, makes sense that you're a public institution partnering with public institutions and screening in a bunch of different contexts, right? With museums, at festivals, what have you, and, meeting an international audience, whether it's in Singapore, Japan, or the United States. You mentioned, you've made reference multiple times to how this project was in many ways a byproduct of COVID and isolation and the time we're living in. In a tweet sharing information about the event at the National Museum of Asian Art, Kevin tweeted, in times like these, I'm thrilled that video essays about the Asian film experience will be streaming from the nation's capital. And in your description, and you've already alluded to this on the Asian Film Archive website, you write that the series strives to be, quote, a means of engaging with the wider film community and continuing our mission to promote Asian cinema. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience screening these works and advancing that mission in the last year. And I ask this particularly in reference to, and again, I live in the United States, but this is really a global phenomenon, the rise in violence against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States, but also Asian people worldwide. Could you talk a little bit about your experience in that regard?
I mean, firstly, the promotion of not just Asian cinema but Asian narratives and stories is very much at the heart of what the Asian Film Archive does, and it is very much at the core of our programs and what we do. And there is one thing to promote cinema and to promote cinephilia, but I think there's also this that the other element of art or culture is this idea of feeling seen or identity, or forming an identity, which I think is very special. Is a very special aspect of art or cinema or culture of any sense. It's obviously deeply tragic and unfortunate what is happening in the US or anywhere else where minorities or marginalized communities are being oppressed or at the mercy of violence. But if a project like this, or if the mission of Asian Film Archive can lead people to challenge intolerance or to allow people to find that identification or to see themselves being represented in some way, that I hope would go a long way into fighting these forces that are pushing people into marginalization. So
we've never really set up to this project to be overtly political. Of course, it was to share different Asian film histories or Asian film cultures, but I think really talking about the violence that's happening now, I think one of the main reasons is obviously ignorance and how the so-called Asian experience is almost perceived or flattened as almost homogeneous, right? I mean, this violence came about because of the pandemic and because of a certain stereotypical kind of like understanding of what Asia or Asian is. So if our project could provide nuances in terms of what these Asian identities are. And I mean, we are talking about multiple types of different identities here. So if that can maybe help people to understand the complications, the complexities of Asia itself or Asian cinema itself, then maybe that's something towards the right direction in terms of education. And I think that's something that hopefully we contributed just a little, in varying countries across the world. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I was wondering, in that vein, in speaking kind of on a more personal level, were there any works in particular, not wanting to say that one work was better than the other or anything, but just on a personal level, were there any videos, whether one or two or three, that were part of the project that just resonated with you in any way? And that could be, and I mean that in the broadest possible sense, and that one that you just really loved the aesthetics of it, but perhaps one that spoke to you on a just like kind of more personal level.
I'm particularly taken by this video essay called Ghosts Like Us, by Ria Rizaldi from Indonesia. So I think why it really compels me is because it's about the Indonesian horror / exploitation films of the 80s and 90s. But on its own, the video essay is also quite horrific. I mean, it also almost plays off this the horror effects of it. So then I'm both witnessing this video essay talking about the film, but also that essay itself ties back to the political history, the real horrors that happened in the Indonesian society back then. So then you kind of understand how this film culture came about. So I think there is a certain meta quality to it that I completely appreciated, both on a cinematic level, watching it, as well as from an educational level, really understanding more about that history from that era. So that particular work really, that stood out for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally a big fan of Ria Rizaldi's works, and Ghosts Like Us is no exception. For me, the work that I felt quite drawn to was Mariam Tafakori's Irani Bag, which, I've watched many times. I mean, as most of the films here, I've watched many times. But, her film is really about this politics of touch, and how that's been portrayed in Iranian cinema. Something that even many of us who've seen, many Iranian films never really quite grasped, but about these Iranian filmmaking restrictions, right? And this is one of them, about how a man and a woman cannot be seen to be actually physically touching on screen, which, on one level, I mean, Mariam talks about how this is a work that she's been working on for quite a while. It's just that, she found this commission as a way to kind of really complete it. But it takes on a new meaning with the pandemic, right? About the politics of touch right now, how our ability to relate to each other, to feel intimacy with each other has transformed. And this film shows that parallel that happened in Iranian cinema, or is still happening in Iranian cinema. Something that we take for granted, just to be able to have that embrace, or to shake a hand, or to pat someone on the shoulder. So there's that part to it, but it's also incredibly funny, just like how these filmmakers have gotten around this restriction of touch, so using objects as a medium for touch, and how actually that actually looks way more intimate than two people actually touching. And I think she plays with these tonalities, and these moods in her film. And so for me, that's a very fascinating work from the collection. Yeah.
Like I said, I'm slowly making my way through the entire series. I'm savoring it. So Kaiwi, I've not seen the video you recommended. I will watch it later today. But Vignesh, I've watched that video essay, and I must say it's one of the best video essays I've ever seen. It's incredible, and I'm very excited for the day when it's. If folks out there, I obviously I hope everyone listening to this will go to the screening and everything, but when all these video essays are online, I look forward to watching that one again and again. I guess you've provided me with a copy, so I guess I can watch it. But incredibly brilliant piece. And to your point, I have not watched a lot of Iranian cinema, and so that is my new goal going forward after watching that video essay, which was just brilliant in all the ways that you've just described. My final question is a pretty simple one, but what are your plans for the project going forward? And I mean that in a more like logistical sense, like do you have screenings planned or things like that, but also I suppose in a macro philosophical sense, like will these one day exist on the Asian Film Archive website? What is your plan for them within the larger work that the Asian Film Archive does? And also, if someone is listening and they're interested in screening these works, how can they reach you? How can they get in touch?
So there are still, the festival life of the project has not ended. Without revealing too much, we have some interest from festivals, in the upcoming months, right up to even September or October even. So that's still going on. So like kind of 1 year on, we're still having interest. So we want to kind of see that through. At some point after it's ended its festival run, we will be releasing them online for free. So it will exist, on the internet for the world to see as premiere. And as a film archive, we're not just about archiving or documenting cinema, but we also would like to archive and document critical thinking and critical writing, and these video essays naturally fall into this, and it will be archived in our collection, and we'll be using this as a jumping off point to perhaps generate more such content. These are conversations we're already having because of the success of this selection. We're thinking, it's not a bad idea for us to perhaps think of future editions. We've not really committed to anything yet, but it is definitely something that's in the cards for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, as an archive, I think we archive content, but it's really nice for Change to also commission and create content. So then, if any researchers out there, anyone who studies Asian cinema, one day maybe this monograph series, however long this might more editions that might be. One day it could be something they can refer to learn more about all these different histories of all these different times, and then that would be really something valuable to add to our archive. So then I think that is the kind of like a long-term kind of like vision of why we do this project.
Yeah, I mean, and also to add, what it has also done, it has connected us to some amazing filmmakers and writers and thinkers. We now know so much more than we did a year ago, and we also know so many more people, and these individual people as repositories themselves. And who's to say that we will not be engaging in ideas or projects that involve these different lines of inquiry or different lines of cinematic exploration, So there is also another way that it has expanded on our existing mission as a platform of cinema. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, all I can say, thank you so much for all of your work. I know that your work, speaking as someone who's very much in the video essay community, obviously, and has heard like it's really impacted a lot of people, and I think has really not only it's been influential in a million different ways, and I think for me personally has really given me a lot of thought about how we go about creating video essays, how we can be collaborative, how we can screen them in a variety of contexts. So thank you very much for your work, and we could talk for hours. And so as you continue, on this journey, and please, hopefully you'll come back. Maybe we can have conversations with some of the artists who made videos. And so I'm very excited to see where the project goes. Again, the Asian Film Archive's video essay series Monographs will screen, and also along with Kevin B. Lee's video essay Explosive Paradox via the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art from April 16th. So it has already passed if you're listening to this, but they'll be available until May 2nd. Kaiwi Viknesh, thank you so much for joining the Video Essay Podcast.
Thanks so much for having us, Will.
Could I just add one more thing? So
yes, of course, please.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. So if anyone is hearing this and is interested to screen monographs, you can write to us. Yeah. And you can write to us at info@asianfilmarchive.org. So that's how you can get in touch with us. Well, if you don't know, you lost the email, just just write to Will and Will will connect you with us.
Yes. And at thevideoessay.com, where the episode is, there'll be links to all of this relevant information. So because that way you can get in touch. And yes, let's screen monographs as often as possible. So
thanks so much for having us, Will. I mean, we really appreciate it. I mean, you have now become part of this journey. Monographs as well. And
it's very heartening to know that it was just a little idea that happened really in our bedrooms when we're having this Zoom meeting, me, Big Nash, and myself, just talking about what we can do. Yeah. And then it has expanded to where it is now. So I think that's a very heartening, and thank you for your words, Will. Yeah.
My pleasure.